and you're watching Jiu-Jitsu for Dummies. So what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling-based martial art and self-defense system created by Carlos and Helio Gracie when they modified some techniques and philosophy of the traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Although Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu focuses primarily on grappling and more specifically on ground fighting, it is a comprehensive self-defense system that includes striking techniques, throws, and stand-up techniques and strategies against surprising attacks. Like most martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu can also be practiced as a competitive sport. The rule set will vary from tournament to tournament, but generally, striking techniques are not allowed in sport Jiu-Jitsu, and you can practice it whether or not you are wearing its uniform, which is called gi or kimono. A legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt instructor should be well versed in all aspects of the art: gi, no gi, sport, and self-defense. Now let's take a look at how Jiu-Jitsu works. Jiu-Jitsu is a comprehensive self-defense system created to allow a smaller, weaker person to defend him or herself against a bigger, stronger, and more athletic opponent by using proper technique, leverage, and most notably, taking the fight to the ground. By closing the distance and taking the fight to the ground, your opponent's ability to strike and inflict damage are greatly reduced. The strategy consists in taking away your opponent's strengths and ability to win while applying your own. The longer you stand and trade punches with someone who is bigger and stronger, the higher the chances of hitting you with a damaging strike. The stronger the opponent, the harder they will hit. The bigger the opponent, the more damage they can take, and the longer the reach is, so they can hit you without getting hit. Superior reach and powerful strikes are both mitigated when grappling on the ground. Jiu-Jitsu is a methodical self-defense and fighting system, and its application can be broken down into 4 phases. Phase 1. Closing the distance and clinching with the opponent. Phase 2. Taking the fight to the ground. Phase 3. Achieving a dominant position. Phase 4. Finishing the fight. So now let's take a look at those 4 phases, starting with Phase 1, closing the distance. Learning how to safely close the distance against someone who is trying to hit you is definitely one of the most important aspects of Jiu-Jitsu. The goal is to create or find an opening depending on what type of opponent you are facing. If you are going against someone who is very aggressive and is moving forward trying to hit you, half of the work is already done since he's helping you to close the distance. Just make sure you time it well and cover your face to avoid any unexpected blow. If you're facing someone who is more conservative and is trying to pick his shots, you might have to take the initiative and throw some strikes to distract your opponent while you close the distance. Closing the distance is also one of the main differences between Jiu-Jitsu for self-defense and sport. In sport Jiu-Jitsu, you don't worry about strikes when closing the distance, and you are facing someone who is willing to grapple with you. As we discussed earlier, taking the fight to the ground is an important part of the system. That's how you mitigate your opponent's superior reach and powerful strikes. There are many ways you can take your opponent down after you have established the clinch, including leg trips, hip tosses, upper body takedowns, and lower body takedowns. Taking the fight to the ground and keeping top position is the primary option in a real fight situation, since most of your opponent's strikes from the bottom position are ineffective. But it's not uncommon for Jiu-Jitsu practitioners to choose bottom position when taking the fight to the ground, a technique known as pulling guard, especially if you are having a hard time executing a takedown. Knowing your opponent's instinctive behaviors and immediately adjusting to them is what will make you succeed from the bottom position. Pulling guard is common in sport Jiu-Jitsu, and the bottom position is, without a doubt, one of the most sophisticated parts of the game. As a practitioner of the art, be equally skilled on the bottom and top positions. The next step after taking the fight to the ground is achieving a dominant position, which will give you great control of your opponent through proper use of body weight distribution, leverage, and gravity. A dominant position will not only allow you to set up your attacks, but also limit your opponent's escapes and potential of doing damage. We have 4 main positions in Jiu-Jitsu: the guard, side control, mount, and the back. 90% of the time, you will find yourself in one of those positions. They follow a hierarchy, with some positions being more advantageous than others. So let's take a look at the guard first. The guard is the ability of using your legs to manage the distance, control, and attack your opponent while fighting off your back. The guard separates Jiu-Jitsu from any other grappling-based martial art. There is no martial art in the world with a guard as developed as the one we have in Jiu-Jitsu. A good guard will not only allow you to defend yourself against strikes, but also execute reversals to come on top and finish the fight. There are many types of guard you can use, depending on how you manage the distance between you and your opponent, but the 3 main guards are closed, half, and open. Each one of those 3 guards can be subdivided into many more. As we talked before, keeping top position is the primary option in a real fight situation. But if you end up on bottom, the guard is your best friend. The guard is a dangerous position, with a plethora of attacks and reversals in constant evolution, especially in sport jiu-jitsu, where you have the freedom to create new moves without worrying about strikes. Side control is the first dominant position you should look for when you have top position. Your goal is to get around your opponent's legs, aka passing his guard, and achieve perpendicular position in relation to his body, making it difficult for him to recover his guard. From there, you have many attacks, especially in sport jiu-jitsu, where you can also use the gi jacket as an offensive tool. In a real fight situation, side control is mostly used to smother and hold the opponent down while looking to improve positioning to the mount or back controls. There are also different ways to control your opponent while in side control. The main ones are chest on chest, kazagatame, reverse kazagatame, and north and south. The mount is the second most dominant position in the jiu-jitsu hierarchy. It offers great control of your opponent and a multitude of attacks in both self-defense and sport jiu-jitsu. The main reason the mount is such a dominant position is that you can inflict great damage via punches and elbows with little to no risk of being attacked back because of the reach advantage from the mount. Often, your opponent will turn his back to protect his face or escape, making things worse for him. In sport jiu-jitsu, chokes are the equivalent of punches. If I can choke you from the mount, I can definitely punch you. The back is the most dominant position in jiu-jitsu. You have excellent control, and your opponent can see where your attacks are coming from. The more he tries to punch you, the easier it is to choke him out, since he's not defending his neck. The back control is the end of the line, positioning-wise. You only go back to side control or mount if you are losing control of the back. Stay there until you finish your opponent. After achieving a dominant position and establishing control of your opponent, the next step is finishing the fight, with either a submission hold or strikes. Submissions can be categorized into 2 groups: chokes and joint locks. Chokes can be further classified into air chokes and blood chokes. Air chokes are executed by compressing the trachea, which leads to asphyxia. The compression can be applied using your legs or arms. Blood chokes are executed by compressing the carotid arteries, cutting or limiting the blood supply to the brain, which could cause unconsciousness or even death if the hold is maintained for a prolonged period. Joint lock submissions can be applied to any joint of the human body by forcing the joint to move past its normal range of motion. Let's take a look at the application of some of the most popular submissions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, starting at the wrist joint. Wrist locks are applied by hyperextending, hyperflexing, or rotating the joint. Wrist locks can be hit from almost any position. Moving up to the elbow joint, the most common attack is the armbar, causing the hyperextension of the joint. Shoulder joint. Kimuras, omoplatas, and Americanas are the primary attacks against the shoulder joint and rotator cuff. Neck cranks can be applied in a variety of ways, attacking the neck in different angles. Most common submissions are the can opener and the twister. Banana split and crotch ripper are the most common attacks at the hip joint. At the knee joint, we have knee bars and heel hooks as the primary attacks. Last is the ankle joint, where toe holds and straight ankle locks are the go-to submissions. Alright guys, so this concludes our Jiu-Jitsu for Dummies video. Hope you guys like it.